Hello gamers, welcome back to Epic Encounters. Today, we're revisiting a game that's been making waves for all the wrong reasons, Dustborn. This is our second video covering this so-called wokest game ever. And if you thought our first deep dive was intense, just wait until you hear what we've uncovered this time. From its disastrous launch to the shocking lyrics in its main song, Dustborn is a game that seems to be more about pushing an agenda than providing a fun experience. Let's dive in and see what's really going on with this game.
We're the aliens. We're the refugees. We walk among you. We're right behind you. Your time is past. Your kind won't last.
My name is Dominique Tipper and I am the voice of Pax. Dustborn is the band that Pax is the lead singer of, bless her. The singing was the most challenging part of this because, you know, we went to Abbey Road to record the songs and I was just like, what am I doing in Abbey Road singing like, oh, the Beatles have been here and here I am singing little weird songs from the Dustborn.
Dustborn has now become a prime example of how not to create a successful video game. Initially, when I made my first video about Dustborn, I talked about the overwhelming wokeness that seemed to be embedded in every aspect of the game. But now, after the game's release, it's clear that the developer's agenda has not only alienated a large portion of the gaming community, but has also led to a complete and utter flop. No one is playing this game. The player numbers on release day were abysmal, and it's not hard to see why. Dustborn has managed to turn what could have been an engaging narrative into a preachy, heavy-handed piece of propaganda. What's even more surprising, or perhaps not so surprising, is how quickly the game has faded into obscurity. You would think that with all the attention it got pre-launch, it would at least have a strong start. But that's not the case. Dustborn has fallen flat, and the player base has evaporated almost as soon as the game hit the shelves. The game's servers are ghost towns, and it's clear that even the most dedicated fans of this type of woke storytelling have given up on it. It's as if the community took one look at what Dustborn had to offer and collectively decided it wasn't worth their time. And honestly, can you blame them? Dustborn is a game that doesn't just wear its agenda on its sleeve, it shoves it down your throat at every opportunity. The story is riddled with themes of alienation, oppression, and identity politics, all wrapped up in a dystopian narrative that feels more like a lecture than a game. From the get-go, you're bombarded with messages about how society is broken, how the system is rigged, and how the only way to survive is to embrace the otherness that the game glorifies. But what really shocked me, and many of you, as I saw from the comments on my last video, was the game's main song. I had several comments from viewers pointing out some truly disturbing lyrics. One comment highlighted a particularly jarring line. We're the aliens, we're the refugees, we walk among you, we're right behind you, your time is past, your kind won't last. This isn't just wokeness, it's a threat. The lyrics suggest a complete overthrow of traditional norms and values, presenting a world where the so-called aliens and refugees are rising up against the established order. It's not just unsettling, it's downright aggressive. Another comment that really caught my attention mentioned the bizarre and inappropriate lyrics in the game's opening song. The viewer pointed out that the song actually rhymes new with newborn. When I first read that, I couldn't believe it. I thought it had to be a joke, but after digging deeper, I found that it's true. The song, which plays during the opening of the game, really does include those lyrics. It's disgraceful, to say the least.
We're the freaks. We're the outcasts. We look just like you. We're nothing like you. Your past you. We will eclipse you. We're the aliens. We're the refugees. We walk among you. We're right behind you. Your time is past. Your kind won't last. We're the Dustborn. This bug is airborne. We're the new porn. Our kind is newborn. We're the Dustborn. This bug is airborne. We're the new porn. Our kind is newborn. We're the Dustborn.
Now, I understand that art is subjective, and music in games can sometimes push boundaries, but there's a fine line between being provocative and being outright offensive. Dustborn's main song doesn't just cross that line, it obliterates it. The lyrics are not only inappropriate, but they also feel like a deliberate attempt to shock and provoke, rather than to add any meaningful context or depth to the game's story. It's as if the developers are more interested in pushing an agenda than in creating a cohesive and enjoyable gaming experience. And let's not forget the context in which this game exists. Dustborn is rated PG-16, which means that underage kids can play this game. This is particularly troubling when you consider the content of the game's music and its broader themes. The fact that a game with such a heavy-handed agenda and inappropriate lyrics is accessible to teenagers is alarming. It's one thing for adults to choose to engage with this type of content, but to market it to younger audiences is irresponsible. After finding out about these lyrics, I felt compelled to dig even deeper into the game, and what I found was more of the same. The entire soundtrack of Dustborn is steeped in this kind of messaging. The songs are filled with references to identity, rebellion, and overthrowing the status quo. There's no subtlety, no nuance, just a constant barrage of woke ideology that leaves no room for alternative perspectives. The game's visuals and character design further reinforce this agenda. Almost every character you encounter in Dustborn is a walking, talking stereotype of the woke movement. You have the non-binary characters, the LGBTQ+ representatives, the activists, and the rebels, all portrayed as the heroes of the story. Meanwhile, anyone who represents traditional values or the old way is either villainized or presented as outdated and irrelevant. This kind of one-sided storytelling is not only lazy, but also alienating to a large portion of the gaming audience. It's clear that the developers of Dustborn were more interested in making a statement than in creating a game that could be enjoyed by a wide range of players. And that, ultimately, is why the game has flopped so hard. There's nothing wrong with exploring themes of identity and social justice in video games. In fact, when done right, these themes can add depth and richness to a game's narrative. But Dustborn is a prime example of how not to do it. The game's preachy tone, combined with its lackluster gameplay and unappealing characters, makes for an experience that is both tedious and off-putting. And this brings me to another point. Where is the fun in Dustborn? Games are supposed to be enjoyable, right? They're supposed to provide an escape from reality, a chance to immerse yourself in a different world and experience something new. But Dustborn doesn't offer that. Instead, it drags you through a dystopian landscape filled with misery, despair, and constant reminders of how broken the world is. It's not engaging, it's exhausting. Even the combat and gameplay mechanics, which should have been the saving grace of this game, fall flat. The controls are clunky, the AI is predictable, and the level design is uninspired. It feels like the developers put all their energy into crafting the game's narrative and agenda, while everything else was treated as an afterthought. As a result, Dustborn fails to deliver on the most basic elements of a good video game: fun and engaging gameplay. And yet, despite all of this, I find myself coming back to the music. It's not just the lyrics that are problematic, it's the entire approach to the game's sound design. Simon Poole, the game's composer, has spoken at length about how he wanted the music of Dustborn to reflect the game's themes of rebellion and resistance. And to be fair, the soundtrack does achieve that. But at what cost? The music in Dustborn isn't just background noise. It's an integral part of the game's messaging. Every beat, every lyric is designed to reinforce the narrative that the world is broken, and the only way to fix it is through radical change. But what if you don't agree with that message? What if you just want to play a game and enjoy the story without being constantly reminded of the developer's political beliefs? Dustborn doesn't allow for that. The music, the visuals, the dialogue, it's all so intertwined with the game's agenda that it's impossible to separate one from the other, and that's a problem. As I mentioned earlier, Dustborn is rated PG-16, which means that teenagers can play this game. This is a demographic that is particularly impressionable, and the fact that they're being exposed to such one-sided messaging is concerning. It's not just the inappropriate lyrics, it's the entire package. Dustborn presents a world where traditional values are ridiculed, where rebellion is glorified, and where anyone who doesn't conform to the new order is cast aside. This is propaganda, plain and simple. And while there's nothing wrong with exploring different perspectives in art, there's a difference between offering a viewpoint and outright indoctrination. Dustborn crosses that line, and it does so with a sense of arrogance that is both off-putting and, frankly, insulting to the intelligence of its players. The developers of Dustborn had a chance to create something truly special. They had the opportunity to explore themes of identity and social justice in a way that was thought-provoking and engaging, but instead, they chose to go down a path of heavy-handed messaging, and the result is a game that is more concerned with making a point than with providing an enjoyable experience. And the worst part, the developers seem completely unaware of how alienating their game is. In interviews and promotional materials, they talk about Dustborn as if it's some kind of revolutionary masterpiece. They praise the music, the story, and the characters, all while ignoring the fact that their game is failing to connect with the very audience they were trying to reach. At the end of the day, Dustborn is a lesson in what happens when developers prioritize agenda over gameplay. It's a game that could have been great, but instead, it's destined to be forgotten. The player numbers are already dismal, and I can't imagine that trend reversing anytime soon. Gamers want to play games, not be lectured to, and until developers like those behind Dustborn realize that, we're going to keep seeing more flops like this one. As I reflect on the state of Dustborn, I can't help but feel a sense of disappointment. This could have been a game that brought people together, that sparked meaningful conversations about important issues, but instead, it's a game that divides, that alienates, and that ultimately fails to deliver on its promise. So where does that leave us? Dustborn will likely fade into obscurity, a footnote in the history of gaming, and perhaps that's for the best. It serves as a reminder that while games can and should explore different perspectives, they also need to remember what they are at their core: games. They should be fun, engaging, and above all, respectful of the diverse audience that plays them. In conclusion, Dustborn is a game that had potential, but squandered it in favour of pushing an agenda. The woke themes, the inappropriate lyrics, the heavy-handed storytelling, it all adds up to a game that is more concerned with making a statement than with providing an enjoyable experience. And as the dismal player numbers show, gamers aren't buying it. To those of you who commented on my previous video, thank you for bringing these issues to my attention. Your insights helped me dig deeper into Dustborn, and what I found was even more troubling than I initially thought. This game is not just a flop, it's a warning sign of what can happen when developers lose sight of what makes games great. What do you think about Dustborn's direction and the way it has been handled? Do you think there's any hope for this game, or is it doomed to be forgotten? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this one. And with that, we wrap up this deep dive into Dustborn. If you enjoyed this video, or if you're as shocked by Dustborn as I am, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth gaming analysis. As always, keep exploring, keep gaming, and stay epic.
In Abbey Road, singing like, oh, the Beatles have been here, and here I am singing little weird songs from the Dustborn.
We're the newborn, our kind is newborn. We're the Dustborn.